Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora. Welcome to the CHAR Data Initiative's Workstream panel discussion. I'm Ben Lee Harwood, the Policy and Program Analyst for Community Housing Aotearoa, Ngā Whariro o Aotearoa. I'm the current lead on the CHAR Data Workstream, and I'll be taking you through this session today. I'd first like to acknowledge all our partners in this work, both past and present. This just hasn't happened overnight, but has been very purposefully crafted over many years to try and deliver a high-quality data and evidence platform. I would also like to acknowledge our members and our community housing providers, because without your tireless mahi, there wouldn't be much data and evidence to collect, present, evaluate, and grow. I say current lead in the community housing space because after 3.5 years at CHAR, I'm leaving on Friday to begin my OE. I say this as if there's any feedback, next steps, or criticism for the work, you can refer that to my CHAR colleagues because I'm out. I'd like to introduce Theo Bernard, who's going to take over some of this mahi as well. So welcome, Theo. Kia ora. Recently, we've been looking to expand this mahi to improve the data and evidence base of the community housing sector. Today, we'll be presenting some of the tools we've developed in-house at Community Housing Aotearoa and with our partners in this work to deliver high-quality, informative data services to our members. This is part of the wider work we are conducting to assist our members with tools for long-term planning, informed decision-making, and improved workflows. Let's see if I can do this. Awesome. I'm thankful to be joined by some of our partners in this work. To my right, we have Tom Clark from SBM Assets and Mitchell Anderson and Tom Logan from Urban Intelligence. Tom Clark will be demoing SBM's asset management software, and Mitchell and Tom from Urban Intelligence will be showing some of the risk and social amenity mappings tools for CHPs. If there is time at the end of the session, we may open it up to the floor for some Q&As, so if you have any partai, hold on to them and we may be able to circle back. To kick us off, I'll quickly be going through a run-through of a software we've developed in-house at Community Housing Aotearoa called our Development Pipeline tool. So what is the pipeline? The Development Pipeline tool is an online databasing software we developed to capture information on the status and features of chip developments, providing a tool for coordination, reporting, and mapping. This project started in 2019 when we began capturing information on new developments in an Excel spreadsheet to inform conversations on chip sector delivery. While I love Excel as much as the next program analyst, we heard from our providers that there was a need for an online platform where chips could record information on their own developments in their own time at their own discretion. Working through a databasing software called NAC, we developed and trialed this tool with members, capturing information on 560 units to date. The pipeline tool is a crucial element of our work to provide quantitative data to evidence the amazing work of our members. Through the software, each organisation can have multiple staff logins associated with their organisation's portal, allowing teams to keep each other updated on how new developments are progressing. Each organisation's information is privately and securely held, visible only to staff members associated with their organisation. CHAR alone is able to see the collated information to assist in our advocacy, coordination, and reporting on behalf of the sector. The software also offers an ability to create automated and filterable tables and graphs, allowing organisations to easily report to their boards, management teams, or other stakeholders. Using latitude and longitude data, you'll also be able to map your developments across the country. We'll demo some of these features later on in the presentation. So how it works. Information about your developments are inputted by your team in the form behind me. Among other fields, some of the information we collect regards lenders and funding types, resource and building consent milestone dates, and unit delivery by tenure type. We've elected to include this information to maintain a high level of information with an ease of data entry. We've configured the pipeline to acknowledge the breadth of work and unique developments which our members are engaged in, and which we've heard so much about today. As the pipeline is a bespoke tool developed by CHAR, we're able to easily configure it to the needs of our members and the changing development environment. With the information reported through the form on the previous slide, the pipeline provides automated graphing and reporting. The data included behind me is for the 50 developments and 566 units which participating member organisations have entered in the software to date. Each chip will see the equivalent of these graphs for their own developments. Reporting is done at both the unit level and the development level, with the former emphasising delivery across tenure types and the latter showing how developments are progressing through the resource acquisition, building consent, and land acquisition process. Filter options often offer an even greater level of reporting. Organisations can, for instance, understand their delivery in specific regions or councils across various funding types, or those done independently or in partnership with other community housing providers. We as CHAR are able to provide sector-wide reporting about how new developments are progressing, maintaining the sensitivity of individual projects while demonstrating the capacity of the sector. The aggregated data allows us to offer diverse range and insights about CHIP delivery. For instance, we can better understand building and resource consent timeframes for CHIPs in different councils, preferential lenders to the sector, and how our members are delivering multi-tenure developments across varied funding streams. To date, we've used pipeline data to assist our work with the Greater Christchurch Partnership, the Auckland Community Housing Provider Network, and many of our external communications and reports. Between the pipeline tool and our supply survey, where we have address-level information on almost 1,600 units, we were able to demonstrate the significant growth in the community housing sector in recent years. With 3,000 new public housing places being made available through Budget 2023, the development pipeline tool will provide qualitative evidence for demonstrating where and how CHIPs are delivering new homes and the unique value add of the community housing provider sector. With user-inputted longitude and latitude information, the software will also map when new developments are being delivered. At a high level, the mapping software offers a visual representation of the geographic spread of your new developments for reporting to stakeholders and demonstrating where you're operating. I did say a quick presentation, so let's keep it that way. We're looking to get more organisations involved in the software. We have information on around 560 units, but we know this is a fraction of the total development that's likely going on. If you'd like to participate, please get in contact with anyone from CHAR, particularly young Theo Bernard, for getting onboarding. The benefit of this bespoke software means we can be responsive to the wants of our member organisations, so we're continuously looking for feedback for how we can improve the service of the pipeline tool. We're also progressing our thinking in how this integrates with our other data initiatives, such as our financial survey and our supply survey, to offer a one-stop shop for providers to better understand how financial profiles and portfolio profiles compare to other members of the sector. This is a conversation we're looking to progress, and I once again refer to the team if this is a conversation you'd like to be a part of. If there's been one theme coming through loud and clear at the conference, the first day of the conference, it is that CHIPs are doing amazing work, and that is both under-acknowledged and under-recognised. We've developed the pipeline tool to provide evidence to that, to support that, and to celebrate that. What's next? Once the developments in the pipeline tool have been built, the ribbons cut, and the brand new homes tenanted, it's time to start focusing on the long-term health of your new asset. This is the specialty of SPM Assets, who have partnered with some of the largest CHPs in Aotearoa to deliver asset management software and support. We've heard from providers that there's often significant need for asset management software, but access to sophisticated systems can incur significant costs, which some CHIPs find difficult to afford. In 2020, CHAR approached SPM about the potential to enter into a partnership to provide asset management services to CHAR members with less than 150 properties. In this arrangement, CHAR holds a master license with SPM, which is then sub-licensed to eligible CHIPs who pay a significantly reduced fee. We're currently working with 3 CHIPs and looking to expand and continue this pilot. Tom Clark is leading this work from SPM's side and has overseen the onboarding of many CHIPs into their system, totaling thousands of properties. Tom Clark is the acting general manager of SPM Assets. With over 11 years at SPM Assets, working alongside many different clients, Tom understands the practical challenges asset owners, asset managers, and senior leaders face when extracting and communicating tangible benefits from their asset management planning process for their individual organisation. I'll now welcome Tom up to present. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ben, for the opportunity to be here today and to participate in this session. So, kia ora koutou. My name is Tom Clark from SPM Assets, and I'm here today with my colleague Mitch Miller, young fellow over there, who's going to put his hand up in a moment. And we're here to outline some of the work that we've been doing with CHA over the past year or so. But before I dive into that, I'd like to briefly introduce SPM, who we are, what we do, and who we work with. So in a nutshell, we're a company who provides cloud-based asset management planning software and services to any organization that owns a large number of built assets and who needs to plan long-term. It's all about helping owners and managers make more informed decisions so that critical assets continue to do their job. We work in lots of different sectors, including housing, health, tertiary education, and other sectors in both New Zealand and Australia. But the community housing sector has always been a key area for us since the company started 22 years ago. And here's a little flavor of some of the housing organizations that we work with, and I think you'll see some very familiar names there. So as I've said, the community housing sector has become more and more important to us over the years, and that's proven by the fact that our survey team now assesses over 70,000 houses each year. So that's a lot of visits to people's homes. So maybe by way of introduction, what is asset management planning? As you know, assets exist to provide value to the organization and its stakeholders. In the community housing space, the concept of value, I believe, is the provision of safe, healthy homes for families and individuals. But it takes planning and long-term thinking for this to become a reality and to make it sustainable over time. The real value in asset management planning then is about making good use of limited money and people. So we firmly believe that good asset management will ensure the efficient and effective use of scarce resources, I think we're all used to them, including capital and time. So the problem and the solution. About 18 months ago, Chris Glowdell, Vic Crockford, Mitch, and myself, we got together and we discussed the challenge that many smaller providers face in New Zealand when it comes to asset management. We agreed that smaller chips really need the same planning, analysis, and reporting tools that many larger providers have, but they faced the barriers of affordability and resourcing. So to solve that challenge, we agreed a shared asset management database arrangement designed exclusively for smaller housing providers where CHA holds the master license. So this is a first for us. The arrangement means that participating smaller chips now get access to the same software platform through CHA and exactly the same benefits as the largest organizations in New Zealand, but at a fraction of the cost. So the CHA shared asset management system is simple and easy to use. It's pre-configured, it's aligned with good practice, and it's flexible and manageable. Oh, sorry. Just go back one. So just to introduce the software, we follow an assess, analyze, and plan approach. And the software tool helps really in a number of very simple ways. And the way I think about it, it provides a central asset register, includes basic information about the home, the address, floor area, etc. We'll have a look at that in a moment. It reports on the condition of the homes at whatever level of detail is appropriate. And that's really important because there's no one solution fits everybody. It stores and reports on important information like asbestos, like seismic, flood risk rating, healthy homes, or fit-for-purpose criteria. And fourthly, and most importantly, it predicts the life cycle expenditure for the homes over a 10 and 20-year period. So really looking at the long haul. So elements like roofs, floor finishes, repainting, etc., recognizing that the first 3 years is usually the most important. So in a nutshell, I guess it's about what assets exist, their condition, how they're performing, and how much money you're going to need to spend on them over time. Obviously, this evidence-based approach helps with budgeting, prioritizing projects, as well as business cases and the F-word funding decisions. My next 4 slides just give a bit of a flavor in terms of what the software looks and feels like. So this is just going to loop, and I'll just cover a few points about it here. So this is the first screen you see when you log in, keeping in mind that this is very much a demo data set. Firstly, it's about organizing and categorizing the portfolio by region, leased or owned, or housing typology. You select what you want to look at, and the system returns a list of properties and their location in a map view. Clicking on the colored pointer then allows you to see some of the basic facts about the property, and the color indicates the general or average condition of the home. You can also see the construction year and other information as well. So this is just the starting point. But I think the key thing here is there's no right or wrong way to arrange the information. The category structure should really follow a logical approach and just how you intuitively think about the portfolio yourselves. So the first step is about organizing things. The second step is to start to look at the base information for each house by drilling down from the category level into an individual property. So the key points here for the database is it's all pre-configured fields. They're available for standard data that you want to collect and report on a property. It's unlikely that we haven't got a field for something that you would want to include. And if you have, we'll be able to create it. So the screen just shows the standard fields, but we also have more fields for healthy homes, data, and other things that can be summarized and reported on. I think the key point here is that every piece of data in the database really needs to be useful and relevant. It's really easy to get carried away and end up with data overload and just getting overwhelmed. You can also store photos and documents at both the property space and component space level. And in terms of the CHA process, we typically process and load information from the chips using Excel spreadsheet templates. And I think it's good to keep in mind that clients are very rarely starting from scratch, so you can always use what you've got as a starting point. And we use a very simple structured approach to make that process easy. So then it's about interrogating the data. So once you've got the property and component data loaded, we can view and edit it and update it and see the gaps. And similar to the property data, we can load existing component level detail using templates, and we can map this to a master component reference library that we manage. So that includes base lives, unit rates, and standard criteria like naming conventions. So that's really important. You don't end up with 10 different ways to describe a single component. And once it's loaded, it's easy to drill down into the detail and update quantities and see where the gaps are. And we're then ready to analyze and report, recognizing those gaps. So then we're into the fun bit. The system will analyze the data. It will produce a life cycle forecast for each component based on its condition grade, its base life, and its replacement cost, and some criticality factors. We can filter on a particular year. You can drill down and see the exact components that are being forecast for renewal in each year, for the roofs or hot water cylinders, or for the one property, or for the entire stock. So this is where we start to get insights into what properties are going to require the most money, and then use this factual evidence to make more informed decisions like prioritizing works, letting contracts, deciding to defer expenditure, or even dispose of properties over time. So ultimately, it's a tool to help achieve a better outcome for everybody, and that's good quality, healthy, fit-for-purpose homes. So to wrap up our section, It's about making asset management work better for your organization by sharing knowledge, leveraging lessons already learnt by other chips, adopting good practice, and most importantly, moving from a reactive approach to a more planned, sustainable future. Thanks again for your attention at this late hour, at the end of a very busy day, and I'll now hand back to Ben. Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Just as SBM's asset management system provides in-depth forecast information about the internal health of your homes, Urban Intelligence risk and amenity mapping offers unparalleled insight into the exposure of properties to risk from environmental challenges and climate-related events. Social amenity mapping also offers entities a deeper understanding about how their assets are situated within existing social infrastructure. CHA has been working with Urban Intelligence to develop a tool for CHIPs to understand the risks to and unique features of their portfolio and future developments. We're currently conducting a pilot project in Ōtautahi, mapping approximately 3,000 properties, and we're scoping out how the software could be best configured to benefit our member organisations and their operations. Tom Logan and Mitchell Anderson are co-founders of Urban Intelligence, a research and consultation firm down here in Ōtautahi, supporting evidence-based decision-making. Tom has a PhD in risk analysis and is a senior lecturer in civil systems engineering at the University of Canterbury. Mitchell is on the cusp of his PhD in civil systems risks with a specific focus on improving the local climate change and natural environment risk assessments. I'd like to welcome them both up now. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko Mitchell Anderson taku ingoa. I'm the Managing Director for Urban Intelligence here in Ōtautahi, Christchurch. As Ben mentioned, the other hat I wear is I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Canterbury in civil systems engineering. Now, within this CHA Data Initiatives workstream, I'm going to be discussing housing in a changing environment. But more specifically, how to make your data go further, so we can start to build the evidence base at which you make your decisions. As you all know, our communities, our iwi, our infrastructure providers, our councils face major challenges, whether it's climate change mitigation, adaptation, spatial long-term planning, emergency management, asset management, the list goes on, and as Chips will know, and be all too familiar with. The legislation space around Aotearoa recently has been an ever-changing and evolving one, where our councils, our infrastructure providers, etc. are now legislated to assess, disclose and understand their risks to climate change and other physical processes. Not only this, but they then have to provide some form of adaptation plan, which then implies or infers how they're going to rezone their districts, which, as community housing providers, you will operate in and are impacted and affected by. And so, as all of these work streams are happening and these changes are, I guess, ongoing, the question is, how do we make more informed and more aligned decisions, specifically for our current infrastructure, our current building stock, but also our future planning? Where's the best locations to start to invest in healthy, safe and resilient homes, in not just the next 5 years, but the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years, the life cycle of your infrastructure? One of the ways we do this is, well, we ask the question, how do we make your data go further? Many chips will already hold this information in-house in some quality or another. And so it's taking this address information, be it at an Excel level or otherwise, and turning it into information about your emissions, your risk, your accessibility, your asset management, your emergency preparedness at the unit level, the suburb level, across your entire portfolio. And how do we start to report this information back to your managers, your boards, so that more informed decisions can be made going forwards? Well, these are some of the questions we've been lucky enough to work with Ben, Theo, Chris and Paul and the team at Char on over the last 6 to 8 months. And we decided that, well, let's run a small pilot study here in Otatahi, Christchurch. And let's look and see how we can take this address information and turn it into something tangible, visible and useful across the board. And so using around 3,500 units here in Otatahi, we thought we'd look at how do we map the accessibility to key amenity types that the residents or occupants of your homes either rely upon or care about. But it's not just about empowering the residents by placing them in locations that are fostering good behaviours around the things that they need and rely upon, but also keeping them safe, dry, healthy in our resilient homes. And so part of the legislation change that I discussed earlier, all of our local councils around Aotearoa are conducting these climate change and natural hazard risk assessments, which means that in the public domain, there is now a wealth of information about spatially where different hazards will exist. And we can start to look at those using that address information I talked about earlier to understand how that's going to impact your building stock or your portfolio, not just now, but your proposed sites, sites under consent, etc. And so we've got the very efficiently named Otatahi Christchurch Community Housing Risk and Accessibility Portal, and there'll be a prize for anyone who can come up with a catchy acronym for that. I'll skip over to this one, which is just a bit of a loop, but basically what we've got is an online portal which allows users either at the chip level or the char level to log in and understand both their risk and accessibility profiles across a district. And so what we're looking at here is a hazard and risk view, where we've got public information about coastal flooding, coastal erosion, groundwater rise, land shaking, etc. around the district. And using that address information that, again, I talked about earlier, we can start to map out where our properties are. In this case, things have been aggregated up a level for sensitivity and privacy reasons. But naturally, you can expect that if you're a chip, you could log in and view the very point-specific or footprint-specific data that's related to your provider. And so we can start to understand a little bit more information about the hazards, the information that's gone into this assessment, and start to see, well, what do these changing hazards look like over time under different sea level rise increments, under different temperature changes, and different time spans or IPCC scenarios. I'll let this loop through a couple more times. But as councils around the country are beginning to do this work, I think Christchurch is relatively far ahead in this, but lots of this information already exists and means that it's really not too difficult to take the Excel-based or otherwise address information that you're all sitting on at the moment, otherwise known as the gold mine of information, and turn it into something tangible and useful so you can understand the risk to your current building stock, but also your proposed sites in future. The second thing I want to discuss here is, one of the things we want to make sure we're doing is we're placing residents or occupants of these community homes in places that are, enabling and empowering for them to go about their daily lives and in turn thrive. And so what we're looking at here is a accessibility map under different access modes, so walking, cycling, driving and public transport, to different amenities or amenity types that our residents or we as people care about or rely upon. And so that's our general practitioners, our green space, supermarkets, you name it. And again, we can see that around the city, depending on where we place these homes, we're either enabling or disabling residents who either have access to motor vehicles, bikes, or have the ability to walk. The other thing we're looking at here is, well, if our residents don't have access to a motor vehicle and they've got to use public transport, how does that level of service vary throughout the day? If they're a shift worker, can they catch the bus home at 3 a.m? What does that level of service or what does that level of access look like over the course of a day? We know it's not static. I guess where to next? Well, I'll pass over to Tom in a second, who's going to talk through a bit of the vision for where our company's heading as we're starting to do this work all across Aotearoa, mainly with local councils, but we've been lucky enough to work with Ben and the team here at CHAR. But we're looking at expanding the evidence base into regions we're already working, so that's Wellington, Nelson, Tasman and Northland, but also expanding the functionality with the hope that we'll get to work a bit more closely with some of the chips around the country. So that we can include address search functionality, automated reporting, not just at the unit level, the development level, the suburb level, but across your entire portfolio. How do we start to filter and view by different attributes, be it status, proposed sites, under resource consent, occupancy type, etc. How do we create a one-stop shop so that all providers can log in and view appropriate levels of information from other providers whilst viewing the very specific and detailed and sensitive information of their own. And finally, one of the other features we're working on at the moment is, well, how can providers log into this as and when they like and import other CSV information for new proposed sites or as they start to backfill their own data catalogues. But I'm going to pass to Tom, who's going to talk through where we're heading with this work.
Ia, tēnā koutou katoa. Ka poku te maunga te rūni takanakau. Ko ture akuri, te awa e mahi ni aku maharara. No, ahiriri aho, I'm from Napier originally, but I'm now based in Christchurch. Ko Tom Logan takongoa. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Canterbury. But really, when, as Mitch said, we were thinking, like, how do we get this information out to people, to councils, so that you can start thinking about where should people be living in future, where we're thinking about multiple hazards, but also we don't want to be putting our communities, especially our affordable homes, in areas we need to avoid hazards, but we also don't want to lock people into car-dependent futures. So this is kind of where we've been working. We've been working around the country. We've been working with different people on understanding risk, understanding accessibility, understanding emergency levels of service, like what happens in an earthquake, how long would you have to go without access to supermarkets or food? In that process, we made lots of different dashboards, which got a bit ridiculous, and we said, right, let's find a way of incorporating all of this into one place, where we've got a public-facing tool, so it's easy and accessible for everyone. It's easy and accessible for different governments or different councils or different agencies or different providers. So essentially what we're building now is this national planning dashboard that's been essentially tested with councils, so from the ground up. And we're really keen to get your feedback on what kind of information you would like that to include. How can we support appropriately identifying areas of future growth and future development? So one of the tools that we've, through our co-development or collaboration with the council, we've been thinking about street or property level information. So this will be a public facing feature, so anyone can type in an address and see what are the risks that are facing this property. What is the risk in the short term, the medium term, the long term? What kind of things can you do about that risk? What kind of adaptation actions could you be thinking about? From a asset provider's perspective, you can look at different assets, whether it's accommodation, whether it's roads, whether it's business assets, whether it's we've been, for example, working with different hapu around the country on including cultural amenity. How can we show that and look at risk to those elements or assets? And then, of course, figuring out the best way of reporting that so it's easy for you to use either just through PDF reports or printouts, or downloading that into your own geospatial information system, or interacting and integrating it with your new flashy asset management system. And of course, that's the one of the key things that we're keen to work and engage with your team on, is how can we take that information and say, well, we know that the floor level is this. Well, what is that going to mean for the property when there's a flood under this sea level or climate change scenario, or this earthquake, or this rising groundwater? How can we see that risk change in time under different climate scenarios? And of course, thinking about accessibility, like we said, we need to be promoting health-enabling environments. It's not a case of if people don't have access to cars, it's that we want them to not need them. How can we make sure that we're designing our society in a way that promotes public transport or active transport to provide those, make sure that all of the daily needs are accessible? This is tying into the notion of the X minute or 10, 15, 20-minute city or neighborhood concept. Giving people, making sure that we're putting homes in places that can walk to the supermarket, or lobbying the supermarkets to make sure that they're putting the supermarkets in the right place. And of course, the land use planning, when we sit down at the end of the day and say, right, we know that we need new houses, or we know that we're going to have to move a bunch of houses because of sea level rise or because of increased risk in this area, where should we be putting people? Let's not put them in places that are going to be exposed to other risks, and let's not put them in places that lock them into a car-dependent or oil-dependent future. So where are those areas in the city that are safe and sustainable and health-promoting? So I'm really keen to hear feedback on that. Really enjoying this collaboration with you guys. This is a tool that is definitely a passion. Been developing it for the last 2 years, but it's really, really flexible. Basically, we can deliver what the information that you need to make those decisions. Thanks.
CHAR is committed to expanding the data and evidence base for community housing providers. Working in partnership with the sector and data experts like those to my right, we're endeavouring to deliver new tools for informed decision-making and strategic long-term planning. We now have a bit of time for Q&A if there's anything from the audience, or we can give you 15 minutes back before we close for the day. Do we have any partai? We do. Okay, we'll get microphone 4 over to you now.
Kia ora. I'm from Hamaru Housing, which is a very large provider in Auckland. And this information is exactly what our insurers are saying to us with regard to all our units that were damaged in the floods. And my question really is, the uptake by other councils and how available it is, etc. Because, it was needed almost yesterday. And I just want to congratulate you. It looks fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks. So currently we're working with Bulla District, Nelson Tasman, all of the Hawke's Bay, the Far North, and Christchurch. Slowly working our way around. But one of the key conversations we're having at the moment is essentially all of the government agencies are starting to think about their climate risk, and it does, it's going to sound a bit strange, but we essentially are doing this, we are a company, but we don't do a very good job at making money because it's not really our goal. So we can do this and provide this information to councils and agencies so that there's one consistent source of information, and that's the conversation we're having, because we don't think that councils should be paying. This is something that's a national issue, and we need that consistency across the country. So it is a conversation we're having with Auckland, but it's also a conversation we're having with different government agencies to say, let's just roll this out nationally. It's actually really cheap to do, and we've got that information so that, we can be answering those questions. Thanks.
Kia ora, Greg Foster from Salvation Army. We have a valuable partnership with SPM, and they have really helped us transform our whole asset management work. Unfortunately, we are not one of the chips that pay a fraction of what the other chips pay. I'm assuming we pay the full price, or do we get a decent discount? I don't think so somehow. But it's been very worthwhile from our perspective. my question to Urban Intelligence, what's your financial model around this? Are you going to give your model to chips at a no cost, a cost? What are you thinking about that going forward?
It's really the hot seat. Essentially, we've done the analysis. Where we've done the analysis in the different councils, the information is there, and then more or less it becomes we're working with them to make it public. So ultimately, like I guess in Christchurch, we've partnered with CHAR to develop it, to pay for the development costs for that specific functionality. But it's one of the things that I guess there are lots of different options. We've only been operating for 2 years, or less than 2 years. But one option is like a license with the councils to provide that information. And like one of the key things for us is that it constantly gets updated with new information. And that was one of the critiques from Kāinga Ora around the Wellington flood risk maps, that they said, well, it actually should be a living information. I don't know that they knew that we existed at the time, but that's basically what we're trying to do. So if we were providing it to those councils, then we would like it to be available to folks like yourselves.
We've been working with Tom and Mitch to spread the word. We've had a session with Kāinga Ora. They're following up because we do see the importance of this, and I think we all recognize if we don't understand these risks and the amenities that we're not doing our jobs well. And so what we're hoping is that by being able to have joint conversations about the importance of this, and if we can get those councils on board, we've got a baseline. We can show in Otatahi some of this information, and empowering you then to have conversations with those councils where you're working to tell them to get on board with this and to make it available. We haven't been in with insurance companies. I'm just trying to get your transitional housing and social housing covered still. But we know that they're also looking into these, and I don't know.
Well, like insurance companies know the risks and have like in-house capability to do that. The difference, I think, is that they're going to, you're going to get a letter in the post saying, sorry, your risk is too great and you've lost insurance. And we're trying to get that information to councils and communities before then so that they can plan appropriately.
Kia ora koutou. My name's Panapa Eho from Hikarangi Enterprises in Tairāwhiti. For the urban intelligence, some of the stuff that we're starting to think about is intergenerational planning for housing and the resources for housing. And we're looking like 6 or 7 generations ahead. What's the ability or what kind of access of data do you have for winding up and down into future states? So the example is, we're going to be transitioning from pine forest being dominant in New Zealand to natives at some stage. And we're future thinking about where we put plantations of totara so that when, like, in Tairāwhiti, sea level rise is going to affect us a little bit, but actually the rise of our rivers is going to be exponential. So we want to make sure that we're planting our native trees for timber, for housing, 200 years in. And is that something that can be factored into your guys' modelling quite easily?
Yeah, so we, I guess the focus that we were talking about was hazards, but one of the other key things that we're showing is environmental change. So, like, for example, we work closely with Central Hawke's Bay District Council, and like they don't really care about coastal hazards, for example. But their entire economy is around horticulture and agriculture. So understanding like changes to temperature, precipitation, drought conditions. So those kind of things are shown in there. So I guess we wouldn't think of ourselves as being like a go-to shop for where you should be planting trees, but that I guess you would be able to see that information based on those changing environmental conditions under different climate scenarios into the future. Yeah.
Other questions? Going once, going twice, none? Okay, well, then just if you can join me in thanking Ben, Tom, and Mitch